Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Revenue Hacks. I am Calvin Tilokee, CEO of Revpar Media, your place for digital storytelling for your hotel. I'm here with a full crew today, as you can see. We're typically the no-nonsense crew, but Khristina is not here today, so we're going to get into a lot of nonsense. All right. We've got a great show for you today, all about pricing strategy. And as you can see, a full panel of wonderful, good-looking experts. So we will start going around the room here and introduce ourselves and then get right into it. We will start with Thibaut.
Hi, guys. So my name is Thibaut. I decided not to be French anymore after the game of so not French. I'm the founder of Qatar Consulting, a revenue management company offering outsourced revenue management for hotels in Europe. Really looking forward to this webinar today.
All right. Whoever wants to go next, we'll leave it open. We'll be less structured today. Let's just go around in a circle. Sheila.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Thibaut. And Thibaut, I got confused there. Thanks, Calvin. And Thibaut, I thought you were Portuguese for some reason.
That's not much better. That's not much better.
Actually, he's the same.
He looks kind of Swiss, actually.
Yeah, better, much better. Yeah, Swiss.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Sheila Krishnan from SK Consultancy. We offer revenue management and commercial support for hotels in the UK and Europe. And should I pass it on to Ryan?
Hello there. Good afternoon, everybody. So Ryan Haynes, and finally proud to be English after last night's game. Although, as I said to the rest of the guys, I was spending the time actually bathing and putting to bed my niece and nephew while my friend was actually watching the game. So all I heard was a couple of shouts. Anyway, I'm from Haynes MarComs. We help hotels and travel technology companies with marketing and communications to reach wider networks and make sure you're tapping into the right demographics.
All right, well, I take that one on then, Ryan, because you and me are not going to get on today after last night's loss of Germany. Let's forget the football after that. So I'm Sandra Gannon. I'm a founder of Revenue Puzzle, and we assist to turn opportunities into revenues through various ways and support throughout Ireland and Europe. Thanks very much. Over to Sarah.
Thank you, Sandra. And all I will say to the rest of you is, at least your home country's qualified. We didn't even get a look in. Ireland didn't even have a team. So you guys did way better than we did. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sarah Duignan. I'm Director of Client Relationships at STR. The benchmarking people you have seen, I think, already Robin through a previous series and also Aoife. So hopefully I can keep the energy going and the STR flag flying. Back to you, Calvin.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure there'll be no problem with that. And, I just say I'm enjoying all the conversation because this is where it's good to be American. We suck at it. We have no expectations. So if we make it, we're just like, hey, cool. That's it. Let's see what happens. But anyway, today we are getting into pricing strategy. As always, please be sure to send in your questions and comments into us so we can tackle them here live on air. Looking to get into it. A lot of brilliant minds here on the panel. So let's jump into it here. What do we think about the future of pricing? Will this change, you think, in the hotel business due to the pandemic?
I think people are a lot more price conscious, and it comes back to a couple of conversations we had over the last 3 shows of Revenue Hacks. It's value adds, it's various expectations, it's people are looking to research much more where they spent their valuable cash these days.
Agreed.
I think my view is, first of all, hotels need to have a plan on their strategy, on their pricing plan. And this is where I'm really excited for Sarah to be here, because we want to learn about what are the trends that's happening in the SDR world, and then how can hotels then work on their pricing strategy. So yeah, that's my view, actually, because if you fail to have a plan, then you plan to fail. So that's my view, actually.
I mean, I've been working from a revenue management perspective, from a marketing side for the last 15 years. And to sort of get to a point where you feel like all the balls are in a row and now they've suddenly been thrown up in the air. You've no idea where they're landing. I just came back from a trip in London where I paid £29 a night for a hotel. It just makes you think, where are we going? What is the direction we're going on? And having spoken as well to many service departments and the growth of cottages, holiday rentals, there's much more competition out there. Hotels need to be broadening their view and looking at what are they benchmarking themselves against. And we sort of always saw this sort of difference between city and country and rural and coastal. And right now with the staycations and domestic markets, it's all to play for. I think you need to be adaptable, flexible, and really looking at what the market's doing and what the demand is.
Yeah, and certainly from our point of view, as you all probably know, at this point, I certainly can't comment anything on pricing, but certainly on the demand side of things, to your point, Ryan, the demand is slower to come back to places like London, which I think is why you were able to benefit from the 29 quid in a London hotel. Demand is quite slow to come back to London. We're seeing demand much stronger in places like Liverpool and Newcastle. If you go further afield, even in Belfast, so hop across the pond, and we're seeing 90% demand on the books for this coming weekend in Belfast. So hashtag pent up demand, wedding business, leisure demand coming in. No restrictions on the numbers at weddings in Northern Ireland is definitely helping. It's all risk assessed, so dependent on essentially the size of the location that you're having the wedding in. But yeah, further afield, it's much more difficult. Like we're seeing sub 10% occupancy on the books for any of the next 90 days in places like Milan and Rome. Definitely UK is kind of London, should I say, is sitting at about 18%, kind of peaking, if you will, at 18%. But London, if you compare it to other European counterparts for the whole month of June, like what we were projecting forward for the month of June, it was actually had the longest lead time of Dublin, Amsterdam, Brussels, etc. So it had a longer lead time. So there is a little bit of confidence coming back, but still sub 20%.
Right.
The biggest thing I've noticed on the behavior was for the last few months, the booking windows were very, very short. So in terms of pricing, I will differentiate between the strategic revenue management, strategic pricing, and the tactical pricing, tactical revenue management. And the tactical revenue management, tactical pricing is even more valuable today because that's where the fun is happening today. So I believe I will differentiate those two and making sure strategic revenue management which wouldn't change much, but the tactical, that's what we need to focus on. And then I will leverage as much as possible technology, because those kind of change in the market happening 365 days in advance, or any structural change that you cannot see at a human eyes, or any kind of very good revenue manager will not see, I believe technology can see those kind of trends and will react accordingly. So I will leverage technology as much as possible for at least the strategic long-term pricing. And then the tactical one, that's where revenue manager, GM, owner should focus on to make sure they capture as much demand as possible.
I was going to say, I can't see how you can't rely on technology and data in order to make the decisions around pricing today, because the seasonal trends are just not there. We have no idea what's going on. The number of people I've spoken to who've been ordered to take last minute holiday, and therefore they're deciding that they want to do something with their time off, and they're just suddenly making quick decisions as to what they do. What pricing makes an influence, how that makes an impact on their final decisions. Again, we don't really know that consumer sentiment too much enough yet. The market research hasn't been done enough. There hasn't been that turnaround. And so that is where the data of demand is absolutely going to be essential for hotels to better understand what's coming up and really have those pricing models in place that they can adapt and respond as and when that market comes through. I know we've talked in previous weeks as well, particularly about really understanding who your guest is right now, because that's where you can drill down and understand what value you can get.
And Calvin, if you'd like me to, I have a few slides if you want me just to kind of inform the conversation further around the future demand, if that would be helpful to lead that into.
Yeah, we'll get right to that. I actually did see a comment come in from this new person, Khristina, Quigley, whoever that may be. Because Ryan raised a good point about benchmarking in his comments previously. I actually, just out of curiosity, have you seen, Sarah, a change in hotels starting to benchmark themselves or open up different comp sets against, maybe vacation rentals and different things, because now you have to kind of widen that net?
Not so much about against, well, candidly, we don't collect the vacation rental data. We've definitely seen an increase in hotels benchmarking. So, as soon as hotels reopened, they were straight on providing their data, without even being reminded or prompted to do so. I think, Ryan, you mentioned, like, there's never been a more important time to benchmark. Like 2020, nobody wants to see 2020. Really, it's kind of a reference point now. I think everybody wants to get back to the magic numbers of 2019, because anyone who moaned or complained about 2019 maybe not being a great year has now completely turned that on its head, and that seems to be the year that everybody wants to revert to. So we've certainly adjusted some of our reporting and benchmarking to reflect 2021 performance compared to 2019, and likewise with when we talk about how far are we back along the recovery trail. So if 100 is back to 2019, like if you look at Europe is a little bit over a third of the way there. Places like the Middle East are 2/3 of the way there, a little bit over 2/3, whereas places like China are about 85% of the way there. So it's a really vast mix around the world.
But I think benchmarking behavior has also slightly changed. You're no longer just benchmarking yourself to your next door neighbor, which was a very traditional concept. I think because everybody's fishing for the same customer, the staycation customer. If you're a resort with a golf course, you now start benchmarking yourself to another resort, which might not be down the road. It might be 100 kilometers out. And it's the data. It's so critical. So even if you open up a second benchmark set or something, but I think we need to take the shutters off and look not just at your next door neighbor. We need to look at the entire country for the time being until some sort of international travel returns.
I think that's a very relevant point, saying like benchmarking was relevant pre-pandemic, is very relevant during and post-pandemic for sure, but maybe the comp sets are not the same pre and post. And that's very important to review your competitive sets, and because what you were thinking was your competitive set before may not be the same after the pandemic.
Very good point. Very good point. And I think, again, it comes back to the same conversation we seem to have every week is data, right? And knowing who your audience is. If people are driving in, obviously you're not getting a lot of international travel now, but where are they coming from? How many hotels are they passing along the way? Because that's your competition now, right? At any rate, we have a slideshow for you today. So this is exciting. So Sarah, take us away.
Sure. So, like I mentioned before, we call this particular product Forward Star. Let me just grab the charts first. If you guys can,
this is like in school when the teacher shows up with the movie thing. It's like, yes,
the projector. Can you see my projection?
Yes. We can.
We can.
So, like I said, just to kind of inform the kind of story around pricing, because let's be honest, if we don't have demand, there is no reason to price. So you need to have the customers coming in the door. And I've kind of coined this as I was going to say the good, the bad, and the ugly, but let's call it the good, the bad, and the downright really tough. So what you're seeing here is data from Monday of last week. This conversation was just a day too early to show this week's data. So Monday of last week, and we're looking forward right through to coming up kind of the middle towards the tail end of September. So you'll see this is Italy. We're going to look at a few different countries just over the next minute or so. So you'll see it's a really, really tough picture in Italy. So Milan, Rome, you'll see a similar picture when we come on to London, Dublin, etc., any of the kind of big cities. And we have the blueprint now from last summer and last autumn and winter, of course. And what we're seeing into the future is very, very similar to what we were seeing at this point last year in terms of the pickup and where we're seeing that pickup. So we look at Spain, it's all about the Spanish islands. Of course, you've all seen about green lists and who's on the green list and who's not on the green list and all that good stuff. And this is a picture we've seen quite frequently. So it is the Spanish islands are leading the way, the Balearics, the Canaries, of course, everyone desperate for sunshine. So anywhere that's either coast or country indeed. So if you look around the UK or around Ireland as well, you know, anything outside of the big cities, any of the properties outside of the big cities, we mentioned resort markets are doing exceptionally well. So definitely leisure demand driving the Spanish islands. So hovering kind of around that 30-35%, but lead time is really short. If we move down then into Benelux, so we see quite aggressive weekend demand, certainly not what we've seen in Belfast, but really strong demand in places like The Hague. So some of that is well, actually most of that is domestic business. Some of it is a little bit cross-border business as well. Followed by Bruges. So Bruges sitting at somewhere mid-30s, kind of topping out at 40, but again, very, very limited and last-minute demand. It's really Amsterdam is there in the middle in the light blue, and then Brussels at the very bottom. Now, Brussels did okay, you know, in or around the first lockdown as we came out of the first lockdown because they had decent amount of government business still going in there, but pretty flat and sub 10% for the next 90 days. Move things a bit closer to home and look at some of the Scottish markets. So again, last minute coming in, we're seeing it's pretty much entirely domestic. So obviously very, very limited coming in internationally. Edinburgh sitting at sub 50%. That is unheard of in Edinburgh, especially through July and August, where there'll be usually lots of festivals and especially around music and concerts and whatnot, but still much, much better than what we've seen in the previous days, weeks and months. And then some of the other UK cities where, as you can see, I'm progressing towards the more positive views. Again, it's principally weekend business. So we're seeing Liverpool's topping out there, kind of hitting mid-70s, you know, mid-60s, late 60s as we get out through into July and August. So again, everyone just really desperate to get out of the confines of the four walls of their own homes. And then into the Irish market, and many of you, Sandra especially, you'll be well aware of this. It's all about anything outside of Dublin. So if we look at Galway, you know, Belfast, like I said, is doing exceptionally well. You'd have heard us say this in maybe previous webinars. Belfast had a phenomenal start. They're doing risk-assessed weddings, so there's no limit on the number of people that can come to weddings. And I will tell you anecdotally, there are hotels in Belfast right this minute that are hosting 6 weddings 6 nights a week, just to catch up with all the weddings that were postponed last year, and of course those that are already on the books this year. You know, Galway following suit, Galway sitting pretty much every weekend in July and entering into August at in excess of 70% in the books. You know, Cork not that far behind as well, and then it's just the struggle is in the Dublin market, just trying to kind of get that confidence for people to come back into a bigger city. And then just slightly longer term views, just looking at some of the key cities across Europe. London, believe it or not, this was as of the 7th of June to release our 12-month view once a month, so the first week of every month. So London is actually the most positive picture if you're looking further out into the future. So on the 7th of June, for the month of June, London had just shy of 19% occupancy on the books. And on the 7th of June for the month of July, it's 16%. Who knew we'd be talking about those kind of numbers? But as you get out into the future, then you're seeing some pockets of growth as well. Some positivity in the Irish market in Dublin there out into May. So we're seeing some of that group and tour demand coming back. Whether all of that will come to fruition or not remains to be seen, but fingers crossed that it does. And then just finally on the pickup piece, we are finally mostly with the exception of a little bit of decline, which was events driven in Amsterdam in September. We're seeing positive pickup across the board, but like a number of you have mentioned, it is all very, very last minute. And you know, even in the week for the week, which is usually pattern and sentiment that we would usually see in places like the Middle East, but we're seeing that pattern and sentiment across Europe. So that's just some food for thought for the next 90 days and the next 365 or next 12 months out.
I think when you look at that data, it looks positive for London, actually. It's like not to give up hope at all. Like, you know, things should be back to normal from September onwards. And I think hotels really start to need to look into what they have on the books within their hotel and then looking at the ideal segments. That's what I would think as a base to look at their pricing. because the demand looks good, the pickup is coming in, but are they optimizing it? And these hotels individually need to dive into their segmentations. Are they looking at their group bookings? What is the materialization? I can't even say the word rate of these bookings. Are they chasing up? Because there are demand there, and it's just hotel paying attention to this and having the right price to capture the additional demand that's potentially could come in.
And that's a very good point, Sheila. And certainly Sarah's presentation throughout almost all the markets was the weekends is really where there needs to be a completely different strategy. I mean, we always had midweek strategy, weekend strategy, but I think it's more crucial than now. And Ryan mentioned earlier on seasonality. There is no seasonality at the moment anymore. If we're saying Dublin is going into low season in October, let's hope not, because by that time, hopefully we're actually starting to reopen. So we should see a complete switch. So those old plans of going, oh, well, I have peak season, I have my low season rate, I have my whatever shorter season rate, that's no longer there. And the same needs to be reevaluated with the weekends. Midweek is done, Sunday still a struggling day because of hardly any corporate business. So what has that actually done completely to day of week and seasonality?
And it may not be, the price that's going to be a factor for a hotel. It's going to be the occupancy, driving that occupancy up. And unfortunately, we have one awful summer. It's just rain, rain, rain. And as a result, people are making those decisions based on the weather.
Weather forecast. So
really, what is it looking like? And how can you promote what's going on? I mean, I'm in sunny Bournemouth. I can say that both the Wednesdays that I've been here in the office, it's been beautiful sunshine, and the rest of the time that I'm actually off on holiday, it's been pouring down with rain. But what do you do? How can you inspire people of what they can do when they're there when it's raining? Or how can you let people know that it's going to be a beautiful few days to come, and if they've got time off to come and visit? You really need to be looking very closely at those sorts of things, because there aren't the events. There's limited potentially in some places indoor hospitality, or the amount of time that you can spend indoors can be restricted because bookings on the whole an hour and a half to 3 hours. Very few places are offering tables for a whole evening or for an entire day. So to really being able to look at where you can add that additional value to someone's stay, where they feel that, okay, if I come and stay in that hotel, not only am I getting a good rate, but I'm also getting that good service at the same time to make the most of this trip. Because I think people are just turning to house renovations or visiting families locally if they can't actually get the weather to enjoy a trip away.
The weather forecast has got to become a new data set.
Yes. And I agree with Ryan saying price is not always the main decision factor. And I've noticed as well in some destination, mostly like the beach destination or the summer destination, price elasticity this year was much lower than the previous years. So people are actually willing to spend more this year when they travel, because they didn't travel for 1 year or a bit more. So when they travel, they want to go full blast.
Right.
And I believe the price elasticity is much lower this year than it was before. Now London or key cities is a bit different. But when it comes to summer destination, I've noticed in some hotels that the ADR was much higher than the previous years.
Right. So what suggestions would you guys have for, looking at the data we just looked at, for example, as Sheila mentioned, London looking like it will start to, have similar demand in September going forward. What suggestions would you have for people out there to look at their pricing and set the strategies?
I think, okay, so I'm gonna go there. I mean, first of all, is looking at your ideal business mix, right? I think that is very crucial. Business mix kind of change at the moment. So it's looking at what's the ideal mix, how much group business that your hotel could accommodate, and then what are the potential other segments you could drive. So based on that, then you could then, look at what are the demands and the trends out there to generate the other business that could potentially come in within those lead times. And then the other thing that I would look at is the room type pricing, given the fact that, most hotels are not looking at the trends at the moment between 30 and in the range of 30% occupancy. This is my opinion. I doubt hotels are going to achieve 100% occupancy in 2021. It probably will be next year. So how do we leverage those room type supplements to optimize the overall ADR? So these are the two things that I would be focusing on. I mean, I'm sure Thibault, Sandra, I mean, come on, back me up here. Let me know.
No, you're totally right. And I mean, we obviously had a revenue hacks on attribute selling. So it is really highlighting why you're standing out. It is the business mix. It's completely different to previous years. It's completely different. As I said, there's no seasonality, corporate business, group business. It is your leisure. You need to try and figure out what makes people book. And that's, again, comes down to once you have the bookings in the hotel, get your teams to chat to them and find out what made them book you over a similar product. And we raised that before. It is so crucial. The conversation piece is more crucial than ever because they will tell you why they booked you. Whereas if you get the bookings through even your direct booking or bookings.com, you don't know why they've chosen you. And I mean, as we said, the weather forecast is going to become so crucial. If you need to entice somebody to book on a rainy day, it comes down to the rainy 2nd of January, which we always say is the lowest day of occupancy. Well, there's loads of those days now. So we need to try and find a strategy to attract people.
I will maintain as well something that we have been discussing since the beginning of the pandemic, meaning like respect your hotel market positioning. So look at your value price matrix based on your competitive set, see where you stand, and respect this price positioning at whatever cost, because it will be your reputation, to be your brand, and so on. Then based on your pace and on the book, that's where you can start to adjust yield up or down, but not too far off from your price positioning within the market. I think that's very relevant, because if you go below, you will damage the brand. If you go too high, then you're maybe not profitable. But that's very important to respect this one. And then you have more the tactical pricing. That's where you see like, okay, I have a good base. I can yield up. I can push my my price for the higher room type because I have more confidence. I have more groups. Or if you don't, you slightly decreasing. But respecting this one, and you can do some more first. Don't get me wrong, but more in the back end, not to damage your brand positioning in the front end.
I would also say it's a lot about driving a demand campaign and really trying to connect with your DMO or the tourist board and trying to work as a community, because there is so much hesitation, so many confusion around the restrictions. There's a lot of hesitancy there to then make that decision as to what to do and where to go. With all the sort of questions about international travel and the travel campaigns that the travel industry is doing to the governments in many countries to try and reopen, what we're missing is the reality of the situation. I think it's sort of like getting those case studies out there. It's of actual people who've had brilliant experiences while they're away, talking about what they've done and how they've done things to let people know that things are possible. I mean, when I was up in London at the weekend, I didn't actually know musical theatres were open because of Andrew Lloyd Webber whole fiasco about saying he wasn't going to open, then he was going to open. I just assumed that all the musical theatres were closed. And then I discover on day 3 that actually they're all open. So there's a lot of miscommunication going out there. And I think as an industry, we need to unite. And if you can look to unite on a local level to raise the profile of your local area, just to start getting that demand in so you can start managing your prices. Because if you don't have that occupancy, then you know that you're going to have to be muting your prices. But what we need to do as an industry is really start getting that positivity out there. We've had too much negativity over the last 18 months, and we need to join forces and say, this is what's possible.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to add to that because Thibault highlighted about pace and everything. It's also important, hotels to start studying the data that is available, not just looking at historical data, but also forward-looking data. So, and there's a variety of reports out there like Demand 360, Forward Star reports. Hotel needs to start looking at combination of these reports to be able to then plan ahead because, a lot of revenue managers are still holding back looking at previous trends and then assuming based on a percentage growth for 2021 or the future year. So it's important to look at, acquire all the data that is available, study them, and then have a plan.
And not just one plan, have a couple of them lined up, subject to changes.
Yeah, we need to be very fluid in our strategies and plans these days. But we got a great question in here from Giannis. Regarding the luxury hotel market, how to understand at which price point discounts in order to grab the demand will deteriorate the perceived quality or exclusivity of rooms, and so the hotel's global revenue.
I love the but, like a good point, Thibaut, but you're saying rubbish. No, no, but I mean, we don't know like what will be the discount on this one. That's a question at 1 million. But again, it goes back to the price and your hotel positioning in the market. So if you know like you have the Four Seasons and you play between Bulgari Hotel and Ritz-Carlton, so that's kind of your up and down, and therefore your lower price should be at least in line or slightly below your bottom rate of your competitor. That's my opinion. But then in an opaque way, let's say like packages or OTA packages in a backend, whatever. You can go below. That shouldn't be an issue because you cannot find out. So meaning like go back to your price positioning, go back to your price value matrix and see where you stand. I think that's very important. But in the backend, you can be much more flexible than what you see on the front end.
Mm. And I mean, what are we seeing in regards to sort of additional revenue that hotels are actually earning at the moment? Because one of the things that I particularly noticed when I was out and about was that a lot of the pubs, restaurants, etc., were half full. And actually, I saw quite a few hotels, restaurants being a lot fuller, a lot more busier than I've ever seen them before. So have you guys seen anything particular there around sort of ancillary revenue generation within hotels?
Definitely in Ireland, because of the way the restrictions are that you have to be a resident in order to eat indoors. The hotels have definitely been seeing a massive uplift. They're still doing restricted times so they can turn it around and so on. Like certainly for the Irish market, ancillary revenue has been a massive lifesaver.
Same in Amsterdam. I've seen some restaurants in some of our hotels who are doing twice as much as what we do in rooms revenue. F&B is a big one. Working from home when you rent the hotel space just for the day. So working, I don't know if they're working in the room, but they are working from home officially. This one is a big ancillary revenue.
It's certainly something that I learned last year from a number of tech providers who saw the almost double tripling of ancillary products being sold. And as a result, that's where a lot of the hotels were starting to make up their revenue. So it's interesting to see that same thing is happening again this year. And I think as well, based on my personal experience, just seeing the amount of promotion hotels were doing, both of their own products, but also of services and other products in the local area, just to be able to offer people that direct access to something. Because it's not necessarily, I don't think people are feeling too comfortable just to meander around a town and try to find something that may or may not be open, that do or do not take pre-bookings. And particularly when it comes to restaurants, etc., that's one of the hardest part. Do you have to pre-book? Is it going to be busy when you get there? How long are you going to be able to be there? A lot of that needs to be communicated, and that does put a lot of hotels in a tricky situation. But if you're offering a lot more than just a bed for the night, that's where you can really add on those to your promotional strategies and factor that into your pricing.
And on that, it's not just, you go to a hotel and you have your breakfast, and you have your breakfast on property and whatnot, and a lot of people are having dinner now on property as well. But I certainly know if I had the option, if you take the Irish market as an example, if I had the option of eating inside and having lunch in a hotel, in the nice warm hotel, and not sit outside under an umbrella when it's pouring rain, invariably in Ireland, it best not rain for the next 2 weeks. I would be taking the hotel option every time. So it does, no matter where you are in the world, the weather in the UK has been pretty horrific, like you referenced, Ryan, other than maybe 3 or 4 days. So that is super, super important. Like if you have that option to eat inside, like we went out for dinner the other night, and there was 7 of us in the UK, in London actually, and we had to eat outside because we were a group of more than 6. Now where we ate on the South Bank was amazing because they had patio heaters and whatnot, so we may as well have been inside, and it was a really positive experience and one that I happily repeat again. But not everybody has those facilities, and that costs money, I know, but anybody who has those facilities, that outdoor dining facility that is covered with something more than an umbrella, let's call it, or very nice umbrellas that a lot of them are, but something is a little bit more covered. They're the locations, like I can tell you as a consumer myself, they're the locations that my husband and I are going to for dinner, that are outside with the patio heaters, the gazebos and the really kind of fancy tented places. And I think a lot of hotels have done a really good job of kind of catching on to that. And I think that'll serve them well into the future, even when COVID is, fingers crossed, gone for good. That'll just be the new thing that people will do. They'll eat outside and have bigger groups and whatnot.
Yeah, no, those are all really good points, and I think something that I've been kind of speaking about over the past years, it's given us as an industry an opportunity to reset, right, and just kind of relook at how we do everything. And I think now what you guys are talking about is this total revenue management, right? Like properly not just yielding your room revenue, but all of your revenue, and really taking that into account. I'll share a quick example. I worked at a water park resort years ago, and it became really important to look at those type of things. Excuse me, because say for example, we had a suite that could fit up to 8 or 10 people, right? You don't want to sell that to a family of 4 on a weekend, because now that impacts how much revenue is spent in the outlets, right, in your F&B and all of these other things in the arcade. So I think now we have an opportunity as an industry to really just relook at pricing in general. And as revenue managers, your skill set now needs to expand to looking at things like this and offering, really highlighting everything your hotel has to offer. But we do have a question coming in regarding corporate business. What do you see happening with corporate business? It's still very low. Has it resumed at all? That one's for you, Sarah. You got all the data.
We're seeing some corporate business, but it's predominantly domestic. Because it's not coming in from abroad. Even if I think about. Ordinarily, I spend a lot of time in Ireland from a business perspective. Do I want to fly into Dublin, have to, do the whole self-isolation for at least 5 days, pay to get out, then the whole test early and release? Do I have the luxury of that? No. So as a result, I'm not traveling to Ireland for corporate. Are we seeing corporate business come into the UK? Yes, we're seeing a little bit coming back into London. It's certainly not in the droves that we used to see. Remember, a lot of the corporate business that will come into London, not all, will be coming from the States or coming from continental Europe or coming from, basically outside the country. There is a decent amount within the country as well. I can tell you anecdotally that cities are getting busier. I started going back to the office a couple of days a week, probably about 8 weeks ago now. And I chose to walk from Euston to our office on the South Bank, which is about a 45-minute walk. And it is very different, Wednesday of last week than it was Wednesday 8 weeks ago in terms of traffic, in terms of the amount of people on buses, in terms of the amount of buses that have to sign up saying, full capacity or whatever, they're 50% capacity or 70% capacity. So it's definitely getting busier, and people are going back to their offices. I don't think travel has resumed just yet, but then I think that's a bit of a timing issue, given that we're kind of coming into holiday period, kids off school, people ordinarily will be taking some time off now in July and August. I certainly plan on traveling for business come August 6th is my new date to get on a plane, and have every expectation of being able to do that, provided the US is on a green list and not an amber one as it is currently.
I'll see what I can do for you.
Have a talk to Joe for me.
Right, exactly.
And Boris.
We do have another question coming in. Do we expect a lot of hoteliers and owners to sell in the next 2 to 3 years based on the results of the last 16 months?
Krishna is not here, but she dropped bomb from outside.
She heard what I said at the beginning about nonsense, and she decided, I'm going to make sure you guys behave.
I think so. I've seen some hotels who are closing their door for good because some of the government help are stopping in the next few months. Unfortunately, I believe there will be more and more as help from any kind of country government will resume shortly. Not looking good for some hotels. So I believe, yes, it may increase.
And I think you can see that in a way that restaurants have behaved over the last year. A lot of restaurants closing, but then at the same time, you're getting a lot of people, grabbing the bull by the horns and saying, this is an opportunity. This is a chance to actually bring out something different. And they're buying up these locations, these venues, and they're rethinking what hospitality is. And it gives them the chance to sort of do it progressively. And to evolve as the market evolves. And this is where I think business owners need to be looking at what's happening and thinking, okay, how can I really rethink my business? How can I rethink those processes, those policies and procedures that I have in place? Especially around, when I was out and about, I was just amazed as well by the lack of customer service. And I think that's due to skill shortage. It's also due to the mayhem and confusion, both of guests and of the hotel staff, of what they should and shouldn't be doing. So really trying to be as crystal clear as possible and look at how you can redeliver or deliver in a different way an experience, because it is all going to be change. And I think that's in some respects, that's the exciting part. We're entering an entirely new era. What happened before the war didn't happen after the war. So, not that I was there by any means, but it comes into taking that time to really listen to what the market's doing, what people are doing, the sentiment of what's going on, and really the role that you play within that. Hotels are no longer just a place to sleep anymore. It needs to encompass the fact that it is part of that travel experience. It is a key part of the journey. I wouldn't have said the same thing 10 years ago. I wouldn't care where I was as long as I had a pillow to rest my head at night. But nowadays, I want to know exactly what I'm getting, and I'm prepared to pay or not necessarily pay for that.
Right. And as a follow-up to that, what about the expectations of independent hotels switching to brands or vice versa, which I think is a very interesting topic?
I can talk about this one as well. I've seen I've seen a lot of independent hotels, not independent. I've seen a lot of branded hotels actually switching off their management contract, debranding their hotel, looking for a white label management or some completely independent alternatives, because the management fees are becoming quite high compared to the cash flows they currently have. So everyone is trying to protect the cash as much as they can, and the management fees is the first one that they are looking into. But if you look back into the previous crisis, it was the same trend when you have seen a lot of hotels deflagging their properties, maybe going back later to the management contract. But the months after the crisis or the years after the crisis, a lot of hotels have deflagged their hotels. Yes.
I've had several conversations as well with management companies that are like new management companies that are looking at an entirely new proposition for the marketplace, realizing that some of the existing ones, and I shan't name names, but they overcharge. They're expecting too much of a down payment from the hotel just to get the marketing done. And what they want to be doing is paying for the bookings that are coming through and paying a really realistic fee for that, and really understanding what that hotel management company is doing on their behalf. I think based on the conversations we've had with some hotels who ditched their hotel management companies in the middle of last year, when they started to look at actually what they were doing, they were unimpressed. And they were thinking, well, what am I paying for here? And that is all eating into their profit. And again, that affects their pricing, because they have to charge a certain price because of the charges because of the outgoings of the business. So I think the more that hotels have had that time to really look at where their expenditure is and what they're getting in return, and that cost of acquisition per customer across the different channels, we are going to see a whole new playing field. And it'll be interesting to see who emerges on the market, because like any time, like in the last recession and in 2001, 2004, we saw a whole load of new startups that really blossomed over those next couple of years. So it's about keeping your mind open, keeping those options open, exploring absolutely every avenue, whilst not taking your eyes again off the market. So I don't know how many pairs of eyes you need, but it's like an octopus. You need probably 8 pairs.
But
Right.
I also think hotels have evaluated their flexibility of what can they do within the brand guidelines, or what would they like to do in terms of looking after the customers. Structure is great, guidance is great, but if you want to stand out and be individualized, then you're sometimes better off as an independent, where you can put your own stamps on. Not saying that they don't need the brand support. So I think it's a balance to cut there of how much support do you need from a brand and versus how much individuality do you want to be.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an interesting conversation, because with the brands, obviously comes with the fees and everything, but with that comes that brand recognition from your guests, right? So when people start traveling again, they know what to expect at branded hotels. You may spend a good portion of that money as an independent on your marketing just to get your name out there, to educate people on who you are. So it's certainly not a cut and dry type of an answer. And our lovely guest today has come in hot with the comments. Wyndham have waived the joining fees, especially in the ME, to gain more traction. I think Christina's going for the mug today. She wants a mug. That's what's happening. But it's funny. This actually reminds me of interaction I had this weekend. I went to join a gym here in Los Angeles, and I walk in and I'm just trying to understand pricing, right? So they charge you a $50 fee to sign up. Then there's a monthly fee of about $35. So you have to pay first and last month when you sign up. Then there's an annual fee 2 months from now. So you have to pay that all pretty much at once. And I'm like, do you people want anyone to sign up? Do you maybe that was your pricing pre-pandemic, right? There was 4 people in the entire gym. And I'm looking around and I'm looking at this guy and he's explaining his pricing. I'm like, you guys may want to adjust this, because this is kind of ridiculous. Why am I paying a $50 fee just to sign up when you're charging me an annual fee in 3 months? And I started thinking about, resort fees at hotels, not saying we should get rid of them, but, just as a pricing conversation in general, we may need to look at things differently than you did before, because just that what worked before may not work afterwards, But anyway, I know we're getting close on time here. Any final thoughts that you guys want to give out there for Khristina, because clearly she has a lot of questions.
Don't give her the mug.
No, that's messed up. All right. Well, great conversation today. I think we'll wrap it up here. Sarah, thank you for joining us and for all that great data.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Join us next week. We are talking about sustainability in hotels. Khristina will be back, and we'll have a very full screen again for you. So thank you again for joining us. Always a great time here, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, y'all.
Cheers.
Bye, guys. Thanks.